Welcome to, or welcome back to, the Agatha May Detective Agency. I'm Agatha May, and in this episode, we're going to be looking at Faith First Academy, the stellar school affiliated with Solid Rock Church. But before we start with that, I want to say thank you to RC and Ollie for being my first Super Thanks donors. Thank you so much. Also, a huge thanks to Patrick over at the Mystery Project for sharing my videos. Faith First is a newcomer to the private school scene. It was only founded in 2022 and includes grades K through 9. Much like Reggie Miller's schools, Faith First isn't accredited because who needs standards? In fact, their standards are so low, they've let Reggie be a substitute teacher. And, just to throw in my favorite joke, their standards are so low they should call it the Miller School. None of the teachers at Faith First are certified with the state of South Carolina, and even though they have bachelor degrees, none of them have a degree in education. They can't really be too picky about their teachers, though, because only the full-time teachers get paid, and I'm going to guess it's not very much. The part-time teachers don't get paid because they're considered volunteers. I've been told by a very reliable source that when the school first started, John Paul was trying to get all the teachers to volunteer. Well, that does sound like a profitable business model. And never mind that John Paul doesn't volunteer. He's special. At the moment, the school is down to a principal, 3 teachers, and a substitute, which sounds like the title of a low-budget 1990s sitcom that never made it past the pilot. To give you an idea of what kind of working environment you can expect at Faith First, the national average teacher turnover rate is 23%. Even Philadelphia and Boston, which have 2 of the most dangerous schools in the country, only have a 23% and 20% turnover rate respectively. But Faith First Academy excels at losing teachers, and their turnover rate is 100%. Way to get a perfect score, Faith First, and in just 2 short years. What overachievers. The school loves to advertise that they're the cheapest private school in Myrtle Beach. I've checked, and they actually are, but they don't seem to have an inkling that when you're pricing a product, being the cheapest isn't necessarily a selling point, because people will wonder why you're the cheapest. I'd say that you get what you pay for, but even though Faith First is cut rate, I think you're still overpaying. Tuition at Faith First will only set you back $3,300 a year per child, unless you're a member of Solid Rock Church. Then you only pay $3,000 a year. Keep in mind that if you do attend Solid Rock, you'll be expected to tithe, and that will cost you more in the long run. You'll also have to listen to John Paul preach, and there is no way that a $300 a year discount is worth that. They also offer a multi-child discount for families. Parents have to fork out $600 a year for each child's curriculum as well, and if your child leaves the school before the end of the year, the school gets to keep the books and workbooks that you've paid for. What a deal! There's also a $50 application fee, and none of the fees or tuition are refundable. Once you pay, John Paul clutches his tiny little elf hands around that money and does not let go. If you'd like your child to attend Faith First, I'll question your sanity, and you'll not only have to pay the non-refundable $50 application fee, but you also have to meet with the principal so she can see if she can tolerate being around your child all day. Then the school has a board meeting to see if your little precious is good enough for their school. At least that's what's on their website. I'm not sure I believe that. I think they'll accept just about anyone as long as their parents will pay. I also haven't found any mention of who is on the school board. I just imagine it's John Paul at the end of a long conference table voting by himself. You might wonder what some of the parents are saying about Faith First, and the school just happens to have these reviews on their website. However, Out of the 9 reviews, 1 is from one of the teachers, and 4 reviews are from 2 couples where the husband and wife have both given reviews, but the school spaced out their reviews to make it look like they aren't a couple. I've shortened the reviews so they'll fit to demonstrate what I'm talking about. John Paul really has learned how to be shady from his father. If the reviews from the parents don't convince you, maybe the school's core values will. John Paul really likes to use the phrase core values, which is interesting since it's usually used as corporate speak. It's almost like John Paul views the church as his business. Weird. While looking through the school's core values, this phrase stuck out to me. We have very little tolerance for strife, discord, and/or drama. Aren't those John Paul's top 3 goals for the day? Their core values also read, "We will love and accept any person who is willing to be a maintainer of peace, but we cannot allow someone to harm our family by continuously sowing discord. Do not associate with any Christian who is a slanderer. Do not even sit down to eat with such a person. Drive out that wicked one from among you. Expel him from your church." Well, maybe this is why John Paul had trouble finding someone to go to dinner with him and had to resort to taking Susie Plain Baked Potato Skinner. Also, the wicked one's call is coming from inside the building. The core values continue with, "We treat one another with great respect. We do not permit anyone to give any personal advice or suggestions unless they have first asked our permission and won our heart. Once someone feels free to tell you what you should be doing without first asking your permission and winning your heart, they have reduced you to a child, and that relationship has become manipulative." Isn't it fun when the guy who tries to manipulate everyone explains manipulation? At least he's talking about something he knows, I guess. And of course, one of the core values has to do with giving, because that's what's most important. To sum up the school's core values, don't make waves, give us money. The curriculum the school uses is the homeschool program from Bob Jones University, and that in itself is problematic. No one should be giving Bob Jones University money because it is a cesspool. It was founded in 1927 by Bob Jones Sr., who told everyone that he didn't want the college to be named after him, but he said his friends talked him into it because if his name wasn't attached to it, people would be confused. Sure, Bob. In the 1950s, Bob Jones and Billy Graham were at odds, and when Billy Graham held a campaign in Greenville, South Carolina, the college threatened to expel any student who attended. I'm usually against violence, but I'll bet Billy could have wiped the floor with Bob in a parking lot scrap. In 1960, Big Bob gave a sermon in which he stated, quote, "If you are against segregation and against racial separation, then you are against God Almighty," end quote. BJU didn't allow black students to attend until 1971 and stated it was due to their interpretation of interracial dating not being biblical. Even when the black students were allowed to attend, they had to be married to another black person before they could enroll. In 1976, the IRS revoked the college's tax-exempt status retroactively to 1970 due to their discriminatory practices. BJU took it to the Supreme Court and lost, then decided to pay $1 million in back taxes rather than change their policy. They did not drop their interracial dating policy until the year 2000. How progressive of them! As a child, I attended a rather strict, independent, fundamental private school, but even we made fun of how strict Bob Jones University was. Back in the day, they had separate sidewalks for the guys and gals because walking on the same sidewalk as the opposite sex was just too tempting and would have probably led to giant orgies of all manner of dancing and holding hands. In 2014, an independent watch group found that BJU counselors had failed to report sexual assault and abuse to the proper authorities. The group also found that the college was telling their female students that the way they dressed incited their assault. BJU promptly fired the watchdog group because they didn't hire them to tell the truth. In 2023, BJU's president alleged that the board chairman of the college mishandled a Title IX investigation. Title IX has to do with the school's response to sexual assault, harassment, and their sex discrimination policy. The chairman was also accused of firing board members who didn't agree with him. Instead of investigating the allegations, the board decided to just find a new president. I guess one who wasn't so disruptive and didn't give a hoot about protecting the students. So Faith First is happily funding Bob Jones University. The dress code at the school is pretty typical for the boys. Black or khaki slacks or long shorts, and a uniform shirt that has to be purchased from Land's End. But the girls, of course, have a more stringent dress code. They can also wear slacks or long shorts and skirts that don't hit more than 2 fingers above the knee, and they wear the same kinds of uniform shirts. But they are further instructed that they can't wear camouflage, nylon or spandex pants, yoga pants, or overalls. Fabrics to be avoided include stretch knit, jersey, flannel, parachute fabric, and leather. Well, I guess you can send your son to school in some sweet 1980s black leather David Lee Roth pants if you want, though. Just think of the rousing rendition of Hot for Teacher he can belt out in the hallway. Faith First forbids any of the students to have their hair dyed or styled in an extreme manner, such as a mohawk, spiked, or shaved clean, because having children that are allowed to express themselves through their hairstyle will never do. Faith First wants all the students to look the same, act the same, be the same. Don't step out of line. Don't make a mess. Don't be yourself. The handful of teachers that are left at the school have a bit of history with the law, which seems to be par for the course with anything involving the Millers. Between the 5 remaining faculty, one actually has no charges. What a loser! Another only has a single ticket, but has 3 bankruptcies. I normally don't fault someone for having a bankruptcy, but when you're using them as a budgeting plan, that's a problem. Another teacher only has 1 traffic violation, but has an arrest for shoplifting $781 of merchandise. The final contestant and the winner of Faith First Academy's Who Has the Longest Rap Sheet has 20 traffic violations and an arrest for shoplifting and trespassing at JCPenney that resulted in a $450 fine. Is being a shoplifter a qualification for getting a job there? Is that how they get chalk and markers for the classrooms? They're so frugal. The school might not give a flying fig if their teachers are doing anything illegal, but they have rules for the students that, if broken, could result in expulsion. They are any involvement or association with drugs, vaping, or alcohol on or off campus, bullying, threatening, harassment, and intimidation on or off campus, involvement in immoral or sexual behavior on or off campus, possession of a weapon or explosives on or off campus, profanity and or obscenity directed at a faculty or staff member, striking a faculty or staff member, testing positive or refusal to take a school-mandated drug test, threat of physical harm with or without a weapon on or off campus, possession of or sending pornography or nude images on or off campus, illegal behavior on or off campus. So not only would the majority of the teachers be expelled, but so would John Paul Miller. I do realize that there are different rules for adults versus students, but the adults, especially the one who owns the school, should be setting an example. And I don't mean an example of what not to do. Faith First doesn't make enough money with just tuition, so they force parents to assist with at least one fundraiser a year. It looks like in the past it's been a garage sale. I'm sure the parents love that. Their big fundraising event of the year, though, is the Ron Kaufman Golf Tournament. Ron is Mark Kaufman's father. This is the second year of the tournament, and boy howdy are they proud of it. You have to pay to play. It's $125 for a single or $500 for a team. And you also get breakfast, lunch, water, and Gatorade in that price. I know you're probably thinking that Faith First is being very generous, throwing breakfast and lunch at the golfers. But they ask for the food to be donated. But what if you want to be more than a food donor? What if you want to do something bigger and better than giving Pop-Tarts and soggy sandwiches? Well, you can be a sponsor. For $200, you can be a whole sponsor, H-O-L-E, whole. I really think they could have come up with a better name for that. Your business will be advertised on the course, on T-shirts, the school website, and social media. For $2,000, you can either be a goodies bag sponsor, a longest drive sponsor, or a closest to the pin sponsor. For that, you get the same perks as the whole sponsor, and you also get a team entry. So instead of paying $200 to be a whole sponsor and $500 for a team entry, you can pay $1,300 more for absolutely nothing. This is some of that fancy math. For $4,000, you can sponsor a child to go to Faith First Academy, and that includes a whole sponsor and a team entry and the warm, fuzzy feeling of knowing you're helping a child go to a subpar, pun intended, school. And if you really want to show everyone how much money you don't care about giving to an absolutely unworthy cause, you can be a presenting sponsor for $10,000. Well, that sounds downright luxurious. For $10,000, you also get to be a whole sponsor and get a team entry, but your business name gets to be on the front of the t-shirt. You know, the side no one can see when someone is golfing. Also, from the photos I saw of last year's tournament, the only people wearing the t-shirts were the school staff. The thought of starting a fundraiser to buy all the sponsorships and having all of the sponsor names be Justice for Micah crossed my mind. It would be a sea of purple on the golf course, minus the red of John Paul's face. From anger, not embarrassment, because I'm convinced he is not capable of such. If the money wasn't going to the school and ultimately John Paul's tiny fist, it might be worth it. With the church attendance declining and the faculty at the school being less than bare bones, it's possible Faith First won't be able to have school this fall. I think that would be the best thing the school has done. I have verified that Now Kids, which was the after-school program at Faith First, has moved and is now under their own LLC and have filed to be an independent nonprofit with the IRS. They are no longer associated with Solid Rock Church. Reginald Wayne and John Paul Miller should have chosen different career paths. I'd say the Mafia would have been a good fit because they adore having power, but I think their fellow Mafians or Mafiites or whatever they're called would get so sick of those two whining about everything and writing emails to news organizations when they don't get their way. They'd probably off them pretty quickly. Well, that makes one think, doesn't it? I think John Paul has desperately tried to succeed in the ways his father failed. But John Paul, you suck at it just as much as Daddy Miller did. And you know why? Because you're just like him. I don't know if the school is under investigation, but I would think that if the FBI is taking a look at the church's finances, they'll have a look at the school's as well. I would be highly surprised if they even keep separate books for the two. In fact, I'd be highly surprised if they keep books of any kind. Tricia is still handwriting checks that look like they're from somebody's grandma's purse from 1982. I don't think their archaic method of check writing is due to a lack of knowledge or the inability to use a bookkeeping program either. I think it's purposely archaic because they think it's harder to track. John Paul needs to remember that Al Capone went down for tax evasion, and that was well before the days of QuickBooks. As far as I know, none of the staff is under investigation or are people of interest in any crime. They are innocent until proven guilty, not including the things they've already been found guilty of. I am working on a video about the Duttons, a husband and wife pastor team who are buddies with Reggie Miller and also have horrible taste in graphic design. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, stay safe and be happy.